What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So, okay, right quick, I'm gonna give you guys an update to a article I covered the other day. That is right. So, yeah, a judge, go ahead, blah. We knew this was going to happen. All these activist judges are getting in front of the Trump administration, but I think I've figured out what's really going on with all of this, right? Because there are lawsuits just coming out of everywhere because of all these actions of the Trump administration. I can see what he's doing, right? He names this out in his book. You go for the big ask, and then you negotiate backwards from that, right? So this is what he's doing. He's applying this to the executive branch. Essentially, he put out a flurry of executive actions and just taking steps to get rid of employees and blah, 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 blah. He's just doing all this stuff. See what gets through, right? If you don't try, you'll never know. That's one of those things. If you don't swing, you won't hit the ball type of stuff going on here. So, yeah, we're going to see how much of this stuff gets through. A lot of it, I hope, gets through. Right, like cutting the USAID stuff. I know you guys are probably sick and tired of talking about USAID, but that's, once again, like the left is trying to downplay this, like, oh, well, it's nothing going on here. They're trying to stop humanitarian assistance, y'all, and they're still making that argument, as a matter of fact. There was another news article, like there's so much news going on right now, it's like I don't know what to cover, but there was another news article talking about another lawsuit around USAID, where there's all these unpaid contracts, and it's like, come on, you people, what, like, he didn't, like, once again, okay, let's back up a little bit. Let's talk about this right quick, because this is insane. He puts a pause on all this USAID funding that's been going on. I'm not going to call it humanitarian assistance, right? So then the left, they start griping about humanitarian assistance, right? So Trump's like, okay, well, we're not going to pause the actual humanitarian assistance, but we're pausing all these other programs, just putting a stop to it. So then what happens is these staffers at the USAID, they said, we don't care. We're going to do it anyway. So Donald Trump hears about this. He's like, oh, they're not halting all this? I put a pause on all this stuff, and they're continuing to do the work. Guess what? You're fired. You're gone. Insubordination, right? Just gone outright. He put them all on leave just instantly because that's what he can do until he can fire these people. Most of those people, they're going to be fired. That is insubordination outright. You are going to get fired. But that doesn't stop the flurry of lawsuits. So now that all these people are getting laid off, they can't do the work. So now they're coming up with the excuse that, oh, all these contracts haven't been filled and the U.S. government owes us all this money. It is getting outright sloppy, y'all. These people are insane. They are begging and screaming, right? I kind of equate it to this lawsuit specifically, right? Because some of it's not contractual, if you will, but it's kind of like, all right, let's say you've got, I don't know, a church, right? And they give out food. Like, say they've got a donation spot where you can go, like if you're homeless or you're poor or whatever, you can go and get groceries from these people for free. They'll give you bags, right? There's those all over the place. They'll give you all kind of necessities, right? Food, paper towels, toilet paper, all that good stuff. Toothpaste, blah. Right? So check this out. Let's say one day they start to expand this, right? They just expand and grow a little bit, and it becomes a pretty big store, right? And they're giving all this food out and everything. And one day they figure out, hang on, there's a bunch of fraud going on. People are scraping money off the top back here. So the church shuts it down. This is the equivalent of you getting together with a bunch of these other people that go and get free food from this store, suing the church. That's the equivalent of this, suing the church because they had to shut down because some nonsense fraud was going on. That's the equivalent of what's going on here. It's absolutely absurd. But let's go ahead and get into this other story, because I found this outright fascinating. And this is something you guys, I don't know how many of you out there play around with ChatGPT and all that stuff, but yeah, if you haven't noticed already, there's a few inaccuracies with some of this, right? But we'll get into some stuff, because there's some quite insane aspects to some of this, if you will. Let's get into it right quick. AI chatbots have significant inaccuracies when summarizing news. BBC says top exec Deborah Turnus says tech firms are playing with fire. That's one hell of a headline. And you like how they spell it, the news, right? You love that, huh? That's just funny, if you will. Well, you got to bring a little bit of levity to politics, don't you? 4 major generative AI chatbots, OpenAI's ChatGPT, Microsoft's Copilot, Google's Gemini, and Perplexity AI, did a shoddy job of summarizing the news, a study by the BBC found. You notice what was not included in all of these? Grok. Go to X and check out Grok. Grok's pretty good, I ain't gonna lie. The organization fed content from its website to the services and then asked them questions about the news. More than half of the answers contained significant inaccuracies and distortions, the BBC said. Examples of errors included Gemini incorrectly saying the UK's National Health Service did not recommend vaping as an aid to quit smoking, and ChatGPT and Copilot both wrongly indicated that politicians Rishi Sunak and Nicola Sturgeon were still in office. Perplexity also misquoted a BBC News report about the Middle East, saying Iran showed restraint and calling Israel's actions aggressive, adjectives that did not appear in the initial news report. Now, I would push back on a little bit of that right there. Now, what those news reports are referring to, like, is that apt, though? Like, that's something these AI chatbots are supposed to do. They're supposed to aggregate all of this news, kind of sift through everything, and then give you an AI summary of the news, right? So if what Israel was doing, right, like, I don't know the articles because they don't actually cite the articles that they're talking about here, but there's a lot of actions that Israel is taking that is aggressive. So if it's an apt adjective that they're using, like, where's the inaccuracy in that? But, however, I will say they do have a lot of inaccuracies on a lot of these, y'all. I'm not going to lie. And what I find very, very fascinating about this is that, and I've started outright, I've actually done this, so sorry for that, guys, but it was months ago before I learned about this, right? These news organizations, they use AI to write some of their stories. That is right. So some of these news articles are written by AI. Like, anytime you read a news article, if it says written by staff or something like that, right, it doesn't actually cite who wrote the article, then yeah, it's probably written by AI. But of course, they have editors that come back, and I'm sure they read over these just to make sure everything. But, you know, that could be one of the reasons why, like, you know, they're putting out a lot of fake news. Because a lot of these people, they may not pay attention. They may not actually proofread all of this stuff to make sure everything is correct. Or it might be some of these people that they're just going through and looking for errors and don't realize that the AI just made some stuff up. Because I'm not going to lie. Like, I used to be an audio engineer. I don't know if I ever told you. Like, I used to be a rapper. I did rap for a little while. I know, imagine that, huh? Look at me. I'm a rapper, right? But anyway, outside of that, I was very fascinated with audio engineering. And I opened my own studio, right? And I had customers come in, blah, 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 blah. I lived my life for about 10 years running a recording studio. So I just love audio engineering. I love messing around. That's one of the reasons why I got into doing video editing, right? Because, like, the original basis for the channel was I would take congressional committee hearings and I would just re-upload those because I had fun doing it, right? Recording it and editing and throwing it online. And then I just decided I wanted to start doing it myself. I said, screw it. But back in the day, I would do that a lot. Like, you know, when I was going over mastering songs and whatnot, I would go through and try to listen for inaccuracies, you know, are the voices too high over here, blah, 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 blah. And, like, I would get to the end of mastering this song after listening to it, you know, a couple of dozen times probably. I'm not going to lie, just having to listen to things over and over and over again. I still didn't know the words to the song because I wasn't listening to what was being said. I was listening to see if their vocals are turned up enough, or if their backup is too loud, or if these ad-libs are too loud or too low, or if the tambourine is too high, or blah, 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 blah. You get it, right? Like, you're not paying attention to the bigger picture a lot of times. So I'm thinking, you know, there could be a lot of inaccuracies. Now, once again, like I was talking about before I got into that rant, I've stopped reading news articles that just have staff, written by staff. I always make sure the news articles that I do cover are written by a human, or at least it's purported to be written by a human, because I read a couple of news articles that just, like, if you were around watching the channel 6-8 months ago, and there was a lot of typos or like stuff that just made absolutely no sense in some of these videos, like some of the news articles that I was reporting on. Yeah, that's probably why, because they were writing a lot of news stories through the AI. Just screw it. Like, why not? If we don't have to work, why work? It's nonsense, y'all, because once again, these AIs, and that's another thing that explains this also, is you heard what they said that they do. They give it the news. They try to correlate all this stuff from all these news websites. Right, well, you got conflicting news, and there's a lot of fake news out there, so obviously the AI, they're going to read this news and take it as fact, so then they're going to report on that. Like, that just goes to show you how much fake news is actually out there, and how much you got to pay attention to what's going on. Like, that blew my mind when I was reading this news article. I'm like, interesting that is, that half of the responses were incorrect, had major inaccuracies, as they said. I just find this stuff very fascinating. But I've been ranting for a while, so let's keep going. So I don't just, because there's more to this story. Let's keep going. The price of AI's extraordinary benefits must not be a world where people searching for answers are served distorted, defective content that presents itself as fact. I'm sorry, that has already been done for decades without AI. Like, humans do this, as a matter of fact. The corporate press lies on a consistent basis. So, of course, they're going to get it wrong. BBC News and Current Affairs CEO Deborah Turness wrote in a blog post, "In what can feel like a chaotic world, it surely cannot be right that consumers seeking clarity are met with yet more confusion." Watch on Deadline, whatever that is. Turness, who was president of NBC News from 2013 to 2017, noted that the BBC is pursuing a number of AI initiatives and holding talks with tech companies to develop new automated tools. But she called on tech giants to pull back on alerts, posing a stark question. We live in troubled times, and how long will it be before an AI-distorted headline causes significant real-world harm? She's right about that. But that's only because you guys lie so freaking much, and it conflicts with factuality, if you will. Like, if one of these AIs, they're going through, right, they're reading over all this news, they're doing this all in an instant too, which is so fascinating, by the way, which is amazing. But they're going on over all this news. Then you got all the actual fact checks, right, the fact checking organizations that go through and fact check all this stuff, and you get conflicting stories here. What does the AI do at that point? Do they go with the news story, the trusted news source, or do they go with the fact check? Like, which one do they do? Like, where do they go? How do they know what's true and how do they know what's a lie if the fake news media machine is constantly pumping out an endless supply of fake news? I don't know. I don't know the answer to that, y'all. Journalists and news organizations told the tech giant about a number of gaffes. One alert generated by Apple from BBC News falsely told reporters that Luigi Mangione, the man accused of fatally shooting the CEO of United Healthcare, had shot himself. He was arrested and is in jail awaiting trial. Another falsely told some BBC Sports app users that tennis star Rafael Nadal had come out as gay. Turness saluted Apple's bold and responsible decision to suspend the alerts given the high stakes of the effort to get things right. The companies developing Gen AI tools are playing with fire, she declared. In the study, the BBC asked journalists and category experts, what's a category expert, by the way? That's fascinating, right off the jump, to evaluate the answers from the chatbots. They determined that 51% of all AI-generated answers had flaws, with 19% of responses citing BBC content actually introducing errors, including incorrect statements of fact, numbers, and dates. Max Goldbart contributed to this report. Now, I read that last line, Max Goldbart contributed to this report, which is fascinating to me because it wasn't written by Max Goldbart, was it? It's just funny that it's not written by the guy, but he contributed to it. What does that mean? Like, let's back up and break that down just for a second. What's contributed to this? He went through and edited it? Like, what's his contribution here? Did he actually write this out? No, because it would say written by. Absolutely say written by. Or written, however you want to pronounce it. I was accentuating the T's on that a little bit extra, if you will, because sometimes you got to accentuate the H's and the T's a little bit extra. But I just find all this fascinating, y'all. That AI, what do they do, right? If we lived in a world where the news was 100% factual all of the time, like they get a story wrong, they retract that story, take it off of the internet, right? And AI were to go through everything, AI would be perfect. That just reflects what we put on the internet because that's where they're getting their information from. That's what AI does. It correlates everything, right? It goes and reads all of this stuff. That's why it is so revolutionary, if you will. That's why a lot of people are making a lot of money with AI. It's going to revolutionize the way we live our lives because they can go over medical records, right? They can go over all medical records in, seconds. Way better than any human could ever do. A human could never go over all the medical records, right? And they could actually start to get a picture of, okay, well, people that get brain cancer have, this blood pressure and this and this and this. They could start correlating all these things and actually getting us treatments before we get brain cancer and actually be able to stop some of these things. That's how revolutionary this is, right? They can look at, say, rocket engines for spaceships. They can analyze all the different rocket engines and design a rocket engine that is the most efficient. That could get us even further, could get us to another star system. I know it's probably not going to happen like that. But what I'm getting at is they can just go over all this data so fast and they can put all this stuff together. But the problem is all the information that's input into the machine has to be correct. Otherwise, you get flawed data. You get a flawed end result, essentially. But so it's like, AI, it's got its good, but it's got its bad as well. So we as humans, we really need to be able to put the correct information into this. And as we can see with what is going on here, when you put in fake news and you ask it to go over all this news just to see how accurate it is, and it comes back, half of it's fake news, what do you expect? And it's funny that the BBC did this study. The BBC is one of the purveyors of fake news and just so happened to be a recipient of 8% of their revenue is coming from the United States government. It's insane, y'all. It really is. I'm still I'm caught up on that, to be honest with you. I'm stuck on the federal government spending all this money on all these quote-unquote premium tools that these federal employees, they've got to have it, y'all. Otherwise, they can't do their job. They've got to be able to read the news and go, just have this really in-depth analysis tool for the news for some reason to do their job. And it's not just USAID, right? It's every single federal agency. All of them. From USAID to NIH to the DOD, for crying out loud. Department of Energy to Department of Education. Both of those are DOE, by the way. Which one of them is probably not going to exist anymore here pretty soon. Which I'm sure you can guess which one that is. But, I'm hung up on that because we've been trying to figure out where can we make some cuts to federal spending in this country. That's what I've been doing. And just so happened, lo and behold, and I still find it so fascinating that the left, the Democrats of all people. The people that stand up and fight for the working man, for the working class of this country, standing up in the face of corporate giants and all this other corporate nonsense, standing up to the rich billionaires. They are the ones propping this nonsense up. As a matter of fact, I'm going to end this video with a clip to show you guys. Check this out, y'all.
Democratic Party have lied to us about everything. They've lied about being the party of the middle class. They've lied about being the party of peace. They've lied about being the party that wants to help poor people. Okay? What the last several weeks have proven to us all is that this is a cadre of criminals and losers and spoiled children of affluent parents who were more concerned about looking good than actually doing good. These are people who were more concerned about looking like they were doing something for the American people than actually doing things for the American people. And that's why I'm so angry. Because this party lied to me while stealing my tax dollars. The Democratic Party lied to us all while they brought in millions of illegal immigrants for their own political purposes for the last 4 years. 20 to 30 million illegal aliens brought in, and now we come to USAID being probably the largest money laundering operation in American history. I'm disgusted beyond words. Disgusted with the waste of money. Disgusted with the waste, with the fraud, with the way that you people use color legitimacy, and the way you use black people as mules to get us to push whatever agenda you wanted to. The amount of division you used black people to sow upon the American people, you used us for that. Y'all were supposed to be the party of free speech, the party of women's rights. You have immolated all of those things. And then, as if enough weren't enough, you then decide that you're going to die on the hill of USAID. You're trying to prevent a government audit because some of you really are trying to stay out of prison. Y'all been out here telling us that the game was rigged against certain people. Well, now we found out who the people that were rigging the game were.
Yeah, I find that so fascinating, right? Because we're finding all this stuff out, and it just blows my freaking mind. But y'all let me know what y'all think about all this down in the comment section. My mind's blown on this one, y'all. Once again, like, we already kind of knew this, but they're just figuring it out. And figuring out that, hey, if they input fake news, they're going to output fake news. It's like, duh. But y'all let me know what y'all think. That's all I got on this one. I want to thank everybody for watching. And y'all try to have a good day. Stay legitical. Peace.